Here is my beautiful PowerPoint presentation about finding a topic for your argument. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are we doing this now? And it is because the way this is set up, Unit 3, which is the annotated bibliography, works in concert with Unit 4, which is the classical argument problem-solving paper. In an ideal situation, these two projects will be on the same topic. And if you do a really good job picking your topic ahead of time, you will save yourself an immense amount of work. Inevitably, there will be someone who decides after they have done their annotated bibliography that perhaps they didn't make the best choice and they want to change. You really don't want that to be you. Because the annotated bibliography is structured in such a way that you will be, you will be taking notes in a formal fashion and documenting all of your sources so that you can use that information as kind of a rough draft to move over into your paper. So, places to find inspiration, there's something called CQ Researcher, which we're going to look at in a little bit. You can read the current news. You can look at the world around you. The main thing to keep in mind is that it should interest you personally. If you just go to the newspaper and pick a current event that you don't really care about, or if you go to CQ Researcher and say, I think this is going to have a lot of sources, so it will be easy, you will be making a mistake. Because the thing to keep in mind is that this topic is going to be your topic for the rest of the semester, which means you will be spending a great deal of time thinking about it, researching it, writing about it. And if it's not something that you have some kind of interest in, it's going to be really, really hard to do that. It has to be something that is actually researchable. There have to be sources available out there on this particular topic. You say we want to have relevance to your classmates. We mean that in kind of a general sense. It has to be generally appropriate for your audience. We don't want something that is so niche and specialized that nobody outside of your workplace will have any idea what you're talking about, for instance. We're going to have a problem, and we are going to propose a clear action to resolve the problem that you are going to talk about. So the usual thing you want to do when you're going to pick a topic is think of something that you like. It can be anything. In this example, I put dogs, and quite frankly, I don't even really like dogs. I'm more of a cat person. But for sake of argument, I like dogs, sports, cars, something related to your major, something that interests you because it has to be able to hold your interest for a long period of time. Otherwise, as we get towards the end of Unit 3, it's going to become increasingly difficult for you to focus on it. Once you have an idea about a general kind of topic, something you like, you want to identify a problem. And when we talk about a problem, we want something that you could have a legitimate argument about. So if you say you like dogs, and you say people shouldn't kick puppies, is it a problem? Yes. Would most reasonable people argue with you and say that perhaps we should be kicking puppies and they need to be convinced that they shouldn't? Absolutely not. It's not a problem in that kind of sense. But if your issue is that you are concerned about the problem of people kicking puppies, maybe what you really should be focusing on is something about the laws against animal cruelty, and maybe they need stronger penalties, because that is something that you could actually research. So we also want to make sure that we're focused on action and not information. If we continue on with this idea about the puppies and keeping them safe and keeping people from kicking them, you could spend the whole 5 pages talking just about here's what the current animal cruelties are and how often it happens, results of it, that sort of thing. But if you only talk about the problem itself, then you're down here in the area of information. We want to move from information to action. So in the paper itself, you will begin by briefly describing that problem, but the bulk of your work is going to be focused on action, solving this problem. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that you want to have a narrow focus so that your research isn't all over the place. If you start with a couple of people mentioned global warming, for instance, as something that they care about. But within that, you have a wide variety of things you could talk about. Narrowing it down to energy use is a little bit better. But if you're talking about energy use, even then you have a variety of different facets that you can focus on. So you can take it down even smaller to something like wind power, and then you have a more narrow focus, because you can look at things like outputs and costs and environmental impacts and talk specifically about wind power, instead of wandering around in the giant, tricky mess that is the current state of information and research on global warming. One place that I had mentioned earlier, if you're looking for things, CQ Researcher. If you head over to Robb Library and go to Databases A to Z and pick CQ Researcher, you will get a screen that gives you things like hot topics, and it lists them by name, and you can go in and it'll give you a general kind of breakdown. So this can be, if you're really stuck, a good general place to get started. You should not use these as sources. And you should also be thinking about your ultimate goals for your paper when you go through and look at this. Because some of these, while they like to list them as hot topics, will not work for our paper. If you go back and look at the assignment sheet, you'll see that one of the specific things that I strongly urge you not to tackle is the issue of abortion. And the biggest reason for that is audience. Remember that our purpose here is that we are going to try to use our persuasive skills, our use of logos and ethos and pathos, to convince an audience that does not already agree with us. And the problem with the abortion debate is that many people, I would say even most people, I would not say all, because that statement needs to be qualified. Many people have a visceral sort of reaction to that. They have deeply held beliefs on that topic. And particularly on the side of folks who oppose abortion, many of those arguments tend to be rooted in religion. And that poses a very big problem if you're actually trying to convince an audience who doesn't agree. Because if someone doesn't share your particular religion and they don't agree with what your religious beliefs state about this topic, you are not going to be persuasive in that particular manner. There are hundreds of different kinds of Christianity. Even within Lutheranism, there are multiple different groups, belief systems that do not believe necessarily the exact same things that other groups believe. So trying to persuade someone that they should do something based on what your particular church says is not a successful proposition. It's not something that you can research very well, and it's not going to work for the kind of argument that we are doing here. So remember, we want to start with our topic, things that we like, look around. What within those things could be problems? They don't necessarily have to be huge problems. I have had people write successful papers on things like weight regulations for baseball bats in Little League. Someone once wrote a paper about how they needed to change the bathroom doors at the school so that you could get in and out of the bathroom without touching the handles. It could be something bigger than that, but it needs to be something that you can actually research and something that you can base your arguments on logic instead of opinion or belief.